please take up their seats. Now we are going to have a small brainstorming session by Mr. Atharva Atale on sedentary lifestyle and its fusion to information technology. Mr. Atharva Atale, he wanted to put forward his studies. Please welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Yes. A bit loud. So as you can see, I'm not like you guys. I am actually 17 years old. So I'm a high school senior. I go to Alpharetta High School, just 15 minutes away from here. And I'm actually here to talk about something a little bit different than what you've been talking about. So I'm talking about the health side, the health issues that are present in IT offices and corporate offices. And this condition is called thrombosis. So thrombosis, the deadly blood clot. So as I said, I'm a high school senior and I'm a member of the Georgia Thrombosis Forum, who I'm representing today and giving this presentation for. And we are an official affiliate of the North American Thrombosis Forum, based out of Harvard Medical School in Boston. So a little brief introduction. What is thrombosis? So thrombosis is a deadly medical condition that causes blood clots in your blood vessels. And this can happen mainly to people who are living a sedentary lifestyle, which is very commonly seen in IT offices and corporate offices, where you're sitting on your laptops for 8 hours in the day and then going back in your car just to sit through traffic for another hour or two to get home. So this is some vocabulary that you should know for this presentation. A thrombus is a blood clot that forms and stays at the site of formation, and an embolus is a blood clot that moves away from the site of formation. So using this vocabulary, we can see that deep vein thrombosis, or DVT, is when blood clot forms and stays at the site of formation in your deep veins. And one of the most common places that this occurs is right behind the knee over here. And the second one, pulmonary embolism, that using the embolus term, you can see that that means that the clot breaks away. And pulmonary means lungs, so it can go into your lungs. And that can be very dangerous because it can cause sudden cardiac arrest. You can be coughing up blood. So both of these conditions are extremely fatal and deadly and dangerous and extremely common. As you can see, pulmonary embolism itself kills about 300,000 people, 300,000 Americans every year, which is more than breast cancer and AIDS combined. But you all know what breast cancer and AIDS are. So that's what I'm trying to do, trying to bring up the awareness of thrombosis so that it will be just like known commonly, just like how breast cancer and AIDS are. So also, every minute a blood clot is found, and every 6 minutes someone dies due to a blood clot. So as you can see, the incidence rates of thrombotic conditions goes up as age increases, which is commonly seen in every single condition and disease. As the older you get, the more risk you have to getting this condition. But as you can see, that there's still some incidences in the 18 through 39-year-old range, meaning that it doesn't matter how old you are still prone to this condition. So as you can see in this diagram, the deep vein that I was talking about right behind your knee. So in the first step, the blood flow is normal, but then most likely due to some injury or surgery or immobilization, a blood clot has formed. And now the blood has to go around it. So as time goes on, the blood cells stick to the clot and it gets bigger and bigger. And eventually it's gotten so big that a part of it has broken off, known as the embolus. And that can be very dangerous because it can go into your lungs, causing pulmonary embolism, or even in your brain, causing a stroke. So some of the risk factors, as I said, immobilization, which is one of the biggest ones. But constant repetition of this immobilization, which is seen in IT life, and just sitting on your desk, sitting in the car, traveling, all of this, you're sitting in one place and not moving, constricting your blood flow. So all of those have the common theme of immobilization, such as surgery, cancer, chemotherapy. And there's one interesting thing, which was previous family history of VTE, or venous thromboembolism. And that's interesting because now new research and studies have found that there has been a genetic propensity for this condition. So you could be susceptible to this condition if one of your parents or your parents' parents had it. So some of the quick symptoms that you'll find, the short-term symptoms are shortness of breath, chest pain, coughing of blood, dizziness, and even sudden cardiac arrest, as I said, for pulmonary embolism. And some of the signs, or what doctors find, are a high heart rate, low oxygen rate, low blood pressure, and a high breathing rate, and even a swelling of legs, because the blood flow stops in your legs and keeps the blood pulled in. So your leg volume increases while the rest of your body stays the same. So it can be seen by the swelling. So some of the quickest ways to detect thrombosis or thrombotic condition are using the symptoms and the signs and evaluating yourself if you have it. And also you can find these other tests such as the venous ultrasound or the Doppler test, the venography, in any hospital. And doctors can perform these tests. So the main way to treat thrombotic conditions are through the use of anticoagulants or blood thinners. And what they do is they literally thin your blood so it can be easier to get around the clot. And some of the most common ones are Xarelto, Coumadin, heparin. These can be found in any hospital or any pharmacy with prescription, of course. So the first time, if you're getting this for the first time, you'll be on this medication for 3 to 6 months. But if it's your second time, you'll be on this medication lifelong, 2 pills a day, twice a day. And the second form, which is less common, are clot busters, or thrombolytics. These literally go and break the clot and bust it, so your body will just circulate the broken clot throughout your body and excrete it in as many ways. And then also you can get it surgically removed through a surgical thromboectomy, where they literally open you up and cut away the clots surgically. So I think this is one of the most important slides. How can you prevent it? So I just want you all to know that DVT is one of the most preventable conditions. It is actually the leading preventable cause of death in hospitalized patients in America. So it's actually very easy to do this. All you have to do is exercise daily, keep a healthy diet, but especially since this is very common during travel, like on long plane rides, long train rides, long car rides, all that. When traveling, you should make sure that you drink lots of water, so your blood will keep circulating. And then if you can, if it's possible at all, try and walk and get up from your seat every hour or two. And if you can't, so if you're, say, in a window seat on a plane and you can't always get up every hour or so, then just wiggle your toes, because your arms are always moving when you're sitting, but your legs are always still. So to improve your blood flow and prevent thrombotic conditions, just wiggle your toes and you should be pretty okay. So some of the things to look out for are injuries, surgery, fractures, or fractures mainly because you'll be on bed rest for 3 to 6 months, such as like a hip or leg fracture. So that causes extra immobilization. Then pregnancy, hospitalization, and as I said, a close family member with previous history of thrombotic conditions. So some of the take-home messages are VTE can be fatal, and it doesn't matter how old you are, it can affect all age groups. You need to know the risk factors, know the symptoms, and if you think you might even have the slightest chance of having it right now, go to your doctor as early as possible, because it's extremely easy to treat it early rather than late. Just a quick thing about the Georgia Thrombosis Forum. We, the GTF, are a nonprofit group that we formed here in Georgia, and our mission is to go and spread awareness of thrombosis to everybody we can, because this is a very common condition, but very uncommonly known. So we started in 2012, and we've grown from 2 volunteers to now over 80 volunteers in total. And we've got proclamations from from the state of Georgia and from many counties and cities in Georgia. And some of those things that we do are, we have booths at several public events like 5Ks, or such as this one, then presentations like this one also to various audiences. And we also write many articles to publish in various media, like we just published in the Costco magazine, which reached out to about 10.6 million people across America. So that's just a few things that we do. And do you have any questions? And also, I just want to say, please go visit our website, so www.gtfonline.net. Rajan was actually 14 years old when he got his first attack. He had just gone under back surgery for he had some condition in his spine, so he'd just gone in an 8-hour surgery, and after he got out, the very next day, he had found multiple clots. He had bilateral pulmonary embolism, meaning that he had multiple clots in both of his lungs at the same time, and that happened twice. So because that happened twice, he's on anticoagulants for all his life. Yes?
Okay, for people who travel quite a lot in airplanes,
Yes.
the airlines had, I think, experimented having a light just right behind the knee where DVT is, So is that true? I mean, did you come across any of that study?
So they've actually been experimenting with that yet. They haven't found any tangible results yet,
Okay.
but they're still looking at that. But the most important or the easiest way to prevent it, instead of using a light, you can just move around and wiggle your toes and make sure to drink lots of water.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
So if anybody has question, can meet him right away. So
I don't have a question, just a quick comment.
okay, please.
In my experience also, 6 years back, I lost one of my roommates to pulmonary embolism. He was from our Parivar too, and we were like 6 months old in US when that happened. And they attributed that to the long, non-stop flight from India. But because that the same case that he had a blood clot in his knee that traveled to his lung, and in the middle of night, he had so, he was 23 years old when that happened. So the threat is real.
Exactly. So just the main important things to remember, just prevent it as much as you can, because it doesn't matter who you are, you're still susceptible to this condition. It does not discriminate. Thank you so much.
It is really a matter of concern that many of organizations have already started giving the privilege to their employees to even walk around or roam around during important meetings. And I also have heard about several bosses who give appraisals based on the diseases their employee have. Anyway, I would request Mr. Jeet Beach to please continue with his next session, ideation and value proposition. Mr. Jeet Beach. Welcome.
I have to admit, I've had a pulmonary embolism, so this is something that's affected me. I was in a meeting one day, and my mother called, and I answered. When my mother calls, I answer, and she said, "You have to go to the hospital right now." And I spent 3 days in the hospital. And I've had several surgeries on my stomach, so I've had every possible condition or cause. I take a lot of really long airplane rides to India. And I've had surgeries myself, so this is something that's affected me too. So I was on Coumadin for a long time. Thanks for scaring the daylights out of me. All right, let's get back to something a little bit more positive. We want to talk about creativity. I want to tell you a couple of stories. I'm going to show you some of the businesses that I've started. I have to tell you this. I have no idea how many businesses I've started at this point, 15, 20, something like that. And most of them are perceived as fairly creative. But I want to promise you, I have never had an original idea in my life. Every single business that I have done, I stole from somebody else. And I blatantly did that, right? I'm going to show you that here in just a minute. When I sold my summer camp business, and it got to $12 million a year in revenue with 700 employees, and I sold it in 2001, I was offered a job as teaching at Georgia State. So I was the international entrepreneurship professor down at Georgia State for about 9 years. And the first semester I taught there, I was teaching an MBA class, a night class, and my ego was really big because I had just sold a business with 700 employees that I bootstrapped with $500, borrowed off of a credit card, right? So my ego was huge, and I got into an argument with the class the first night. I said, this entrepreneurship stuff is really easy. And they were like, no, no, it's not. I was like, no, it's really easy. They're like, no, no, it's not. I was like, oh, it's so easy, I'll make you a bet. I bet you that I can start a business this semester, make it cash flow positive this semester, repay all of my startup capital this semester, and you get to choose the country and the industry that I'll start the business in. And I'll bet you that if I win, I get to give you whatever grade I want, which was a stupid bet because I got to do that anyway. But if you win and I fail, you all get A's. And they were like, okay, we'll take that bet. So they thought it was really funny. So the week prior to that, I had just done a lecture on campus on how the furniture industry is the worst industry in the world because of China. The profit margins in the furniture industry are about 2 to 3%. So they said, you have to start a furniture business. And this was right after 9/11. So they thought it would be funny if I had to start a business in your favorite country, Pakistan. So I had 4 months to build a profitable Pakistani furniture company. And I had no idea what to do. I was completely flummoxed by that. But if you go on my LinkedIn profile and scroll down to my old businesses, you will see the business, the thing that we did. I actually won the bet, and I won the bet 12 semesters in a row. And the product that I did was we took 100-year-old Pakistani kilim rugs, Persian rugs, that I had a kid in Karachi who would go into the flea markets, take pictures of all the rugs, send them to me. I would say, buy this one, buy this one, buy this one. And then we would take those kilim carpets and cut them up and use that as the fabric on a traditional American Martha Washington armchair. The type chair that you would find next to a distressed leather sofa in a ski lodge in Aspen. You know, one of those big armchairs with the ottomans and everything. I stole that idea. I had seen that at a flea market in Montecito, California about 10 years before that. And I had always said, I want one of those chairs. And so finally I had the opportunity, and I kind of rigged the bet. I cheated a little bit. The chair sold for $2,500 because it was a 100-year-old kilim carpet. It was 100% unique. There was no other chair in the world that looked like that chair. And the chair only cost me $450 to have made in Karachi and put on a boat and brought to America. So my startup cost was, I bought 10 chairs, I think, the first day. So how much is that? $4,500. How many chairs did I have to sell to win the bet? Only like 2.5, right? I sold 3 chairs before they arrived in the United States, so I won the bet easily. But it was a really good idea, or I learned a lesson here. A lesson that I should have already paid attention to. That creativity is not necessarily part of being an entrepreneur. So about an hour ago, I told you that I don't care about risk, that I hate risk, I do everything I can to reduce risk. I also don't believe in creativity as an entrepreneur, because all of my ideas were stolen from somebody else. I also went to architecture school at Georgia Tech. I did 2 years of architecture school, and then I got asked to no longer attend anymore. Well, that's a totally separate story. We don't have time for that. I'll tell you that another time. But what I learned about architecture was the last guy who had a fresh idea in architecture was Imhotep, the guy who invented the pyramid. And after that, it's just been stealing from other architects, right? And you ask a musician, where did you get your idea for that song? He'll go, well, Muddy Waters had a song like that 100 years ago, and before that, it was really just a bluegrass song from the 1850s, and before that, it was a slave song from the ships from Africa. All music is stealing from musicians that came before you. And I think that entrepreneurship can be the same thing. So here is the business that I ran. This is the computer summer camp. I just wanted to show you how cool we got it. Not only was it at Stanford and MIT and Georgetown and UCLA and Amherst and all of the best colleges, Sorbonne, Cambridge, around the world, but look at the sponsors that we had. This business at this point is only 5 years old. Sponsored by Adobe, Discovery Channel, Microsoft, Sony, Swatch, Lego Mindstorm, Gravis, Fox, Intel, and here's one of my favorites, EA Games, but you can't really see this one. this is some guy named Lucas, as in George Lucas. Oh. So I got invited to the Star Wars world premiere that year. Nothing cooler than a 29-year-old being invited to the Star Wars world premiere, right? Thought I was the coolest guy on earth. And here's the business I stole it from. So my company is American Computer Experience. I stole that from National Computer Camp. So their company was national, I made that American. I didn't even change the middle name. Their last word was camp, I changed that to experience. It's the exact same thing. Their program starts at it starts Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. It goes until Friday at 3 o'clock. Guess what my weekly schedule was? The exact same. This is a good example of, it's not about the idea, it's about the execution. Their camp was held, I don't have the picture, at Clark Crest Resort in Connecticut. Have any of you ever heard of Clark Crest Resort in Connecticut? My camp was held at Stanford and at MIT, sponsored by Intel and Microsoft. Who executed better? I did. It's not about the idea, it's about how well you execute it, which I think is a fantastic lesson. And so I want to point out this. Would you be upset if you owned the other brand? I don't own McDonald's, I just own Burger King. I don't own Nike, I just own Adidas. I don't own Hyatt, I just own the Hilton. I'm not Coca-Cola, I'm Pepsi, right? How many companies out there are copies of existing companies, right? We think of Conrad Hilton as an amazing entrepreneur, but I read this book that said that there was this guy who his parents couldn't get into a hotel, and so Jesus was born in a manger. Right? Apparently they had hotels 2,000 years ago. So this Conrad Hilton guy didn't invent anything new. And how long have we been having hamburger restaurants? Ever since the Earl of Sandwich invented the sandwich in 1600, we've been having restaurants that sell hamburgers, right? You don't get any extra points for being creative. You don't get any extra money for being creative, right? If any of your customers ever come up to you and say, oh, your idea is so original and so fresh, I want to pay you twice what you asked for. No. When you go to the bank and you make your deposit, I'm going to deposit $100 in my SunTrust account. So they go, oh, that's great, but we're going to take $10 off the top because you copied your business from somebody else. Do they ever say that? No. So if you're going to lunch with your friends, you're all a bunch of friends and you all went to college together and now you're 30 years old and you go around the table and everyone tells what you're doing. And you say, well, I decided I'm going to start a business. What do your friends do? Oh, you're so risk-taking. We're so impressed that you're the one who wants to be an entrepreneur. We're so impressed with you. Well, how did you get your idea? Well, I read an article in Inc. magazine about this guy in Denver. He's doing this really cool thing, and I'm going to do it in Atlanta. Are your friends all of a sudden not impressed that you're an entrepreneur? No, they're still impressed that you're the one willing to take the risk. You're the one doing that all of them want to do, right? They don't care. They're still impressed that you're the entrepreneur. And then I ran across this statistic from the Global Entrepreneur